Are we good to go, Allison?
Yeah, it said it was got it, Allison. So it said it was going on YouTube.
Yep, we should be good now.
Super. I'll call this meeting of the Southeast Education Cooperative Board of Directors into session. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda as it's provided. Look okay to everybody? Seeing heads nod, so we'll go forward with the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. This is Patty.
Is there a second?
Second, Mitch.
Mitch is seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Anybody opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Before we go on to our business sections, two things I'd like to highlight. First, we just approved in the consent agenda the 2020 audit. And I just wanted to highlight and thank the staff. We got an unmodified opinion from the auditor, which always seems strange, but that's actually what we're after, is an unmodified opinion. So once again, great job to our team of taking care of the budget and making sure we're accounting for the dollars appropriately. And before we go on to the business, we are joined with a new member. Justin out of Lisbon has agreed to, I don't know who twisted his arm, but he's agreed to become our lead administrator on the board for this year. So we'd like to welcome you, Justin. And if you got any comments or thoughts you'd like to share with the group.
Yeah, no, thank you for allowing me to join your group. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I know some of you better than others, but look forward to getting to know all of you a little bit better and hoping we can work together to do some great things for SEEC. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for agreeing to serve. We'll go on to old business. Our first item is.
Jim, can I make just one comment in regards to the audit thing? Just so people,
Sure.
Just a reminder is that, you know, we got caught in the with the challenge of the auditor being having the proper credentials, and so that actually is our 2020 audit, and they are currently working on our 2021 audit. They just moved right into that audit, so we should have another audit done here, Brenna, probably before the fiscal year is over, I would assume. So just an FYI on that.
Sooner than that, probably April.
Okay.
It's just never ending audits for me. It's
Yeah.
never ending. Super fun.
First item under old business was our governing board self-evaluation report. I want to first of all thank everybody for taking the time to complete them. Couple of takeaways that I just wanted to share with the group, and as we go forward planning future meetings, we may want to have discussions about a couple of these items. In terms of the areas where some of us identified maybe that there's an opportunity for us to learn more, to become even more effective as board members. In particular, I think three of us responded that we'd like to get a better understanding on legislative possessions of the SEEC. So I will keep that front and center as we get closer to the next legislative session to make sure we're well aware of what positions we as an organization may take, as well as those that other stakeholders in education in the state are really moving forward with, whether that be the administrators, school boards association, or North Dakota United for that matter. Another area that a few people identified was they just weren't really always feeling like they were aware of any concerns that the staff may have. And that's a pretty understandable one for a board to have, because we're not with the staff day to day to hear those concerns. But as president of the board, to all the staff members that are on this Zoom call today, and please share that with the rest of the staff, any and all concerns obviously should first go to their immediate supervisor, whoever that may be, go up through the normal channels. But certainly if there's an employee with a concern that they feel the board needs to be aware of, have them reach out to me or any of the board members. I think we'd all be willing to listen to that concern. Although again, if you haven't first had that concern shared with your supervisor, I will be redirecting the employee to start with that avenue as opposed to starting with the board. A couple of suggestions that came out of the feedback. One I thought was kind of interesting because it fits in with my logic in life. One of us had indicated that they'd prefer we do our board meetings either at the start or the end of the day, because when we sandwich them in the middle, like we're doing today, it just is disruptive to the flow of the day. And I can certainly relate to that. Typically on my own board, all of the committee meetings that I get to be in charge of start at 7:30 in the morning in hopes that I can then get through that and get to work to have my normal work day. So as we go forward and plan next year's calendar of board dates, we'll certainly maybe poll the current board at that point in time, see what their preference is. Especially for a Zoom meeting, maybe we can do these meetings to start our day as opposed to in the middle of the day. I think when we could get together face to face in Castleton, or our next board meeting potentially face to face will be at the new office. I think those are very, very good opportunities. And I think those are better board meetings, quite frankly, than these Zoom meetings, but something to keep in mind. And the other piece of feedback was just that, we really could probably use a summer retreat to really delve deeper into our own operations, policies, and procedures. And again, that's something I'll just keep in mind as we start scheduling a potential retreat to see if we can't do a little bit more deep dive into those type of documents for the organization as well. But overall, I thought, most people felt pretty comfortable in the role as a board member. And I certainly appreciate the feedback. Any questions on our self-evaluation report? Let's move on to the Innovation Fund process update. Kyle, anything to share there?
Yeah, so I participated in the Innovation Fund process just from a standpoint of a observer. I just wanted to hear the discussion. I always think hearing the discussion is valuable. But I'll let Jen talk a little bit about it. Jen and Allison, they facilitated it. So I'll let her talk a little bit about the process. I thought it was really good, but we'll let her dig into it a little bit.
Sure. So just real quick, we wanted to make sure that we were engaging our stakeholders in the process around this innovation fund and how it actually played out. We put some things in place, and so then it was time to see if all of the plans actually came to fruition in terms of actionable processes. And so we did have three superintendents who volunteered to be on the Innovation Fund Review Committee. And ironically or not, those who are two of those folks are on the call today. Justin, as our lead administrator, volunteered, and Mitch volunteered, and also Derek Simonson, who is the superintendent in Griggs County Central. And so the three of them joined me, and then Allison and one of our staff members, Danette Brown, and Kyle, the last three being observers in the process. And what we did is we each scored we had three applicants for the first round, and we each scored those individually using the criteria and the rubrics. And then we kind of did a process that's pretty standard as far as just kind of calibrating our own responses and looking for clarification in anything that was unclear, looking to make suggestions for anything that was clear, but obviously also then to give some sort of a feedback to the applicants and award those that were deemed valuable or that met the criteria, I guess. And so we did that, and I think it was a really good process. We had a lot of great conversation. We hit on a lot of similar ways that we scored those 3, and then we took back after we did the process, and we looked at how could we make things more clear. So the things that we were looking at to make more clear, we put into a document that Allison maybe can speak real quickly to, but overall, we awarded 3 applications, and we have money left. I think we have around $33,000 left. We covered this process with the superintendents and some of the changes that we suggested. And so I'll let Allison tell you just a few things that we were seeking in this next iteration.
Awesome, thanks, Jen. And this was linked in the agenda, so you do have this, but I'll share my screen really quick so we can just touch base on it. And again, we'll be brief on it. We did have great feedback discussion on the review committee that has made the impacts here, just to make sure we're being very clear on what we're looking for and how we're going to score it. So the top part, the guidelines did not change. We went through, I'm going to skip the rubric really quick and jump down to some definitions and clarifications we made. So there was discussion around what collaboration looks like and how we were going to score it. So this part just changed to call the multi-district application and not collaborating, and then added a collaboration question in here of internal, external. So it was more obvious for those scoring and more thoughtful for those applying of how are they going to be collaborative. That's a big part of what we're going for with these innovation funds. So drawing it out specifically was something that was suggested from the group. The other part was really thinking of how can the work coming from these innovation dollars impact beyond the district applying, or the 2 districts, if that would be the case going forward, or 3. And so we wanted to look at some questions. And again, these are still, we have to finalize what it is going to be. But it's looking at how they can push a district further, faster, based off of what the risk-taking district that applied for these funds was able to accomplish. How can it impact beyond their intended audience that could build something regionally, statewide? So we're looking at adding that in so we can really get a feel for what could be beyond what was initially applied for. And some of the reporting may change based on what we put in the application. And so this is the current report outline, but we'll continue to work on that. And so then we did add in the rubric another scoring item. So this one is about that impact. We have the collaboration in here, and so we added the question to help reflect that one. This one really looks at, did they have a good explanation of how they could have a broader impact? We're hoping this will get the gears rolling, and the committee really discussed that, like, gosh, having that in there just makes me think more of what I was going to apply for, what I did, and how I could answer this question. And so we may ask this in the reporting for that first round, just so we can get some of that. And it really is to help the growth of our region, our neighboring districts, but how can we push statewide and get give some praise back for what great risks are being taken and the innovative plans that are happening, and how can it benefit those kids? So we have, I'll stop sharing that. The other piece that did come out of it was the idea that the rolling applications going forward. And so we had initially said that priority deadline, we'll keep that, and then it would just set on a rolling basis. But for management of time of the committee, of timing for when they should get a application in, we looked at having the end of the month being that time that we're going to review anything coming in. So that gives us easier time to plan as a committee. And then also gives a deadline for other districts that are considering, like, oh, I should get it in by this next month, because it just gives them that deadline for themselves, that they don't have to race the clock entirely. But again, Jen did say there's 33,250 some dollars remaining that will be available for anyone that wants to apply for the remainder of the year until those are exhausted. If they are not applied for by the June 15th, I believe it is, then they'll just carry into the next year. So that's where we're at. The committee will continue to work on this and evolve it as it goes. Jen, if you want to talk about, there's other considerations we're discussing around what happens if there's a tie, how do we score, how do we look at if there's more funds requested than available. So those things are coming, and we're kind of just going to keep this rolling and not pause it. And if those situations come up, then the committee has already had initial thoughts of how they would approach it. And so we'll continue to just work through it as they come in. Anything else, Jen, or any questions from the group or from Justin, Mitch from the
I was just gonna say, Justin or Mitch, if you want to add anything there.
No, I don't. I think we did a, pretty solid job going through it and looking through the applications and trying to figure out how we could make it better. So I thought it was a good meeting. I think we've made it better going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree. Nothing, so I don't repeat anything. We're going to do a rotation of people on the committee that selects the winners. I think we said a 3-year rotation or 2-year rotation.
Yeah, I think that's still part of those ongoing conversations. We maybe didn't finalize that, but we did talk about, should the lead administrator be on there on a consistent basis so that there's a link between the board and the superintendents, or would it just be better to have a rotation of the superintendents? But some of those other things are still kind of on that ongoing process, and we're super thankful for Justin and Mitch and Derek for volunteering. Technically, the committee itself is the 4 of us, those 3 superintendents and myself, and then Allison and Kyle and Danette, just in terms of process and making sure that we keep that all going.
Is it listed somewhere if you can reapply if you have another project? If a district's already won, can they apply for another grant?
I think what it says, Patty, is that a district can apply for up to 20% of the total. So I don't know that it explicitly says that they would have to apply all in one shot. I don't know that it says that, but that's a good consideration.
If they have another completely
Right.
different.
Yep.
And do we need to have that spelled out so it's clear, so we don't have all the funds going to, a handful of districts that would not encourage everyone to apply? Or do you think there's enough interest that we won't have a problem?
Well, we're just getting started, so I don't know that I can answer the second question, but I do think that the first question that you asked is a good consideration we'll just talk about that at our next meeting.
We
I think
do have it in the guidelines, but there is some clarification we probably need to write. We do have it stated that each district will only be eligible to submit 1 application by the priority deadline, but if funds remain, districts can then submit another application. But if they've already maxed that 20%, and then that's a discussion that we need to have, but that's what's written in there currently. So they could this year apply again. And if they read it right, probably at that 20%.
So then, Allison, we may also have to talk a little bit about the wording of, is there a first priority deadline? And then what are the rolling deadlines? I mean, we would have to change that because we don't want to have a priority deadline for each month then. Just terminology.
The priority, it has it in there that the priority deadline is October 15th each year. And then we have to make it, if funds are not allocated, applications will be taken on a rolling basis. So that's what we need to update. Yep.
So anybody have any questions on any of this?
Heidi, I appreciate the superintendents that worked on this. I think as you work on in the future, who's going to, I would definitely recommend at least 1 superintendent to be involved, just because I think they're going to have a good perspective of it.
I think our intention was staying with just superintendents would be the ones involved, as they're the ones applying, and then Jen would remain our SEEC voting member, and then just whether it's the lead admin, so it's that connection from you guys to them, and then Mitch was on it as well. So that's kind of what we're thinking, is that the board member, lead admin, and minimum max of members.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think they would just have a good perspective on how the funds would be used.
And the part that we talked a lot about too on there was you guys wanted to be on there, which was so great. And so having that will and want to be on it was super important. And so we don't want to force anyone on it, but want people that want to be there and help in the process and believe in what the funds are created for or available for.
So correct me if I'm wrong, how I interpreted the application process, piggyback on what Patty said is, I was interpreting a school could only go apply for it once for, I'll call it a school calendar year, but then the next fiscal year, a school could reapply again.
That would be accurate. But I
Yeah,
don't know if,
that's
I don't know, Mitch, if Patty's question, I think Patty's question is a good one that we just need to clarify, is if you're limited to only applying once, or if the limiting factor is the amount that you can apply for. You can't probably, you probably can't submit 2 applications in prior to that priority deadline. Perhaps, maybe you have to choose one to submit first, and then if there's still remaining dollars, be able to apply, as long as you don't exceed that maximum 20% per district. But again, I don't know if it's very as clear as we need it to be. I think to Patty's point, right?
I just read through it again and I don't catch that. So I think clarification probably would be good.
Any other feedback on the innovation fund process?
I'll just make a quick comment. Again, it was really good discussion. I did have a couple, 3 superintendents say to me, they were kind of waiting to see what kind of applications were approved the first time around and to get a little bit of a feel for what people were thinking about that process. And so I would expect additional applications or interest as we move forward.
Super. Well, let's move on to our new business section. And the first item is a budget revision update. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to read the narrative that came out in the packet. I'll turn it over to you, Kyle, for any opening comments.
Yeah, so again, we typically, I'm not going to read the whole budget narrative to you. I'll just talk in general. The uniqueness of our organization is that there are lots of different opportunities that generate work and revenue that come to us in the middle of the year. Typically, a lot of the work that we do involves people with an education background, teachers, and so it's typically not something that we will hire a position or do something. We try to evaluate some of that work and shift resources around, and then plan ahead into the next year about how we might cover some of the additional work, or depending on the size of the grant or what the work is. And so what happens within our organization is we shift salaries around, and if people are on our general fund dollars, some of those salaries from our general fund dollars get shifted over to those grants. And so that's an example of what happened this year. Again, if you look at the revised budget, we lowered our budget deficit from the move down to 71,000, and again, that was based on some of the salary dollars. I think about 120,000 of that was salary dollars, and then another 45,000 was from administrative fees. So for instance, when we get the Child Care Aware grant, that was probably about $740,000, if I remember correctly. There are administrative fees in that grant to cover the work of our business services work, onboarding of new employees, and cover that overhead along with some of the additional grants. So the good news, and typically what happens that has been fairly consistent over the years, is we need to increase our revenue and obviously increase our expenses too. And those adjustments were made on those budget lines from Brenna, and but we collectively obviously work on that. So I guess I'll leave it at Brenna. Is there anything else that you'd like me to point out, or that you want to correct how I said it?
No, you did pretty good.
I did pretty good. All right. Sometimes I don't use the accounting words I should be using. I try to use words of English. And So again, as I mentioned on the budget narrative, you look at, we had the one-time spending of 275,000 for our move. And so that's why we had a $209,000 budget deficit that was approved. So again, we're headed in the right direction. And I guess what some of the initial numbers tells me is, as we begin to transition into the new office space and the additional costs moving forward, that there is some room there to cover that new overhead, which we had projected and anticipated when we move forward with the idea of moving into a new facility. So I think it looks really good. I appreciate all the hard work of the staff, and be happy to answer any questions in regards to the revised budget.
Jim, do you need a motion to approve?
I don't actually believe it requires any action by the board at this point in time. I'm not seeing any other hands, so we might as well move on to our next item, which is our exec director evaluation. I'm assuming we're going to probably repeat the process that we've done in the past, and that each of us will have the opportunity to individually fill out a performance evaluation report on Kyle, and then submit it back to, I guess, submit it back to me, but we will form a committee of the board to actually go through those and formalize a recommendation regarding Kyle's official performance evaluation that ultimately we then also submit back to North Dakota State School of Science down in Wahpeton. So one of the things I need today is a couple of volunteers that would be willing to serve with me on a subcommittee to just collate and really come forward with a recommendation regarding Kyle's overall performance. So if there are two board members that would be willing to join me, I would certainly take the volunteers.
I would volunteer, and then I have a follow-up question. With the change of the president in Wahpeton, do we see any change to this contractual agreement?
Not that I've been made aware of.
I'll do it also, Jim.
Okay. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Corey. And then I can't remember, Allison, who sent out the survey to all the board members. Was that you that took care of that for us last year?
Yeah, we'll get it updated, and we did it through SurveyMonkey, I believe. So it compiles nicely, and then we'll get it to you to review and disperse for the group.
Okay. And I think last year, did we also have the staff complete one?
I don't believe we did, but we did have discussion about a 365 type review, but we just went forward with the standard route we had been doing. So no, the staff did not.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if we had done that or not last year. Any thoughts from the board regarding that? Well, seeing none, I think we'll just proceed as we have in the past. Everybody will get the opportunity on that SurveyMonkey. Please, give us good, solid feedback to help Kyle do even better job running the organization for us in the next 12 months. Staffing update.
So I just a little bit of a I guess FYI, just having some conversations. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the next one, to the next number 5. We had Austin, a young man we hired last August, moved back to his hometown to work for the bank selling insurance. He left us a couple, 3 weeks ago. I don't know, time goes by so fast. within the last month. I think that's a safe bet to say. We have posted an accounting position that had some focus on payroll specialist. Since we posted that, somebody internally has stepped forward again to have a conversation about opportunity and career pathway in our business services area. They're currently not in that area, so we're having some ongoing discussions with that person while it's posted. That would mean we would have to replace another position within the organization. But I think I think we're having a good discussion. I mean, the payroll side of the business services side of what we do continues to grow. We recently signed a 1-year agreement with South Valley. They were unable to find a business manager. And so we will, from January 1st to December 31st, provide business services for them. Again, whether that's a long-term thing or a short-term thing, we were just responding to a need from one of our cooperating members. And again, we have a number of those employees that work for South Valley that are already on our payroll. So there was some common understanding of how they work and what they do. But again, it's not a large amount of work, but there continues to be interest in not just business services, but when you get into insurances and human resources and just that whole challenges that area continues to grow for a need within a school district. And again, I'm not sure to what level we're able to meet those needs, but again, that replacing Austin and trying to align a little bit about what we're doing in the future is we know we need a area for a payroll specialist.
Hi, this is Heidi. You mentioned the HR area, and I just it sort of seems like that not very many schools have someone who's an HR person, and just wondering if you see a future in providing more of those services, which almost leans on the attorney HR kind of side, but just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
You know, I think so I'm going to just digress for a minute because it's a good question, and we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation about in regards to ND Fit and the health insurance thing. But we hired an HR person, and whether we had the right person or not, he was here for a year to almost 2 years. Again, I forget. And what we found out about HR services, policies, procedures, job descriptions, all of those kinds of things. It's not an easy service to provide to somebody, and so I don't necessarily anticipate us going there. Gets into some legalese and legalize, and so. But again, how do you help schools that are looking for those types of services? Schools weren't, we tried to promote it just a little bit. I don't know how far we got on it, but I guess the superintendents would, if they have some feedback on, we ourselves internally have a need for an HR person. It's just not a full-time job. Probably could be. I mean, as Jim pointed out earlier, and the feedback we got from the board again is, policies, procedures, who's driving those discussions, who's having, we do them internally and try to do some things internally, but we probably should be looking at them in a more regular basis in regards to the organization. I mean, again, we have 40 full-time employees and a $6.5 million budget with another 100 part-time employees. So we have used attorney services, and we need to be conscious as we grow that there are, not that we wouldn't follow the rules, but that we need to understand at a higher level what some of those things are, and because the more people you get, the more vulnerable you become to some of those actions of not doing the right thing in regards to how you handle an employee situation or keeping up your policies or procedures. I was a little bit long-winded, but it's an interesting question.
Well, that takes us to item 5 on our agenda, Strategic Initiative Report.
Okay, so I will just say on the CCNA, we did get all 12 of our staff hired there, and it will be as of July 1st. So that was just more of that wasn't necessarily a talking point, and the onboarding of those employees in the first few months of that grant have been going well. So in regards to number 5, we just wanted to review just some of where some of our strategic priorities were this year. So I'm going to just start with the facility. We are really looking forward to hosting people on May 5th. I hope people, is that the right date? I gotta scroll
Yes,
down on my
yes,
agenda.
it is.
Well, I think I put that on the agenda, but it's actually Wednesday, May 4th.
Is it
I think-
Wednesday, May 4th?
It's the Wednesday, and it should be on your guys' calendars.
Okay.
Awesome.
So that would be a really good opportunity. I may, if you're up in Fargo and you want to come and visit us before that, or, you know, I think we're moving in next Wednesday, March 3rd, next Thursday, March 3rd, when I come back on Thursday, March 3rd. I think the process has gone well. We sent a few pictures, and our staff is really excited about the opportunity to, you know, for the new building. So are there questions I can answer in regards to that? Or my staff, is there something that we were going to share there? Again, we were labeling boxes and color coding boxes where they go from the mover, and so it's taken up a little bit of time here at the end, but we're certainly getting an opportunity to throw things out too that have been sitting around from grants gone by. The second item, if there's no questions on the facility. So yesterday I was actually at the eye doctor, and yesterday we received our Cognia report. We got it about 3 o'clock, 3:15. My eyes finally cleared up from the dilation about 6 o'clock so I could read it. But so we're going to be sending that out to you after the meeting today. I didn't want to, since we really hadn't had a chance to review it and have a conversation about it. So what we thought would be appropriate, and that we would really appreciate at our May 4th meeting would be that if each board member would read the Cognia evaluation and jot down 2 or 3 ideas or things that stood out, or questions that arose from it, or just thoughts, and that you could bring to the next board meeting, so we could have a deeper discussion, not only about the Cognia, the accreditation report, but, you know, as important as some of the things that not only did our board, our governing board self-evaluation, some of those things fall within some of the things in the Cognia report. But then how do we build from there, from a strategic planning process, from as we move forward? How would the board like to move forward with that process? I guess at the end of the day, based on the feedback that we get from the Cognia and our feedback, and try to lay out a plan to engage our members at a higher level and our board at a higher level into the future. There are some bigger decisions coming up. So as we've made decisions in the past, when first 3 or 4 or 5 years, 6 years I was here, I'm embellishing a bit, but nobody really cared what decisions were made. We weren't that big. We were, trying to get it off the ground and get her going. Always got good feedback. And So, but as we've gotten bigger and the decisions get bigger, we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions and getting the right input, because some of these decisions will have a major impact. The bigger organization you get, the bigger the decisions that you make are. And so we want to make sure that there's understanding and feedback on those decisions as we move forward, because it's going to impact the organization in the long term, far longer after I'm here too. So again, I think that's an important process discussion we have on May 5th. So thoughts on that? I won't repeat myself, but thoughts on the idea that we bring some of those highlights and ideas back and thoughts to our May 4th meeting would be my question back to you.
I think it's a great plan.
Okay. We'll just do that. I don't want to say informally, but we'll just send the report out and figure out how to collect that, or everybody will just be responsible for bringing that forward.
I would just ask everybody to, as Kyle indicated, after you've went through the report, if you have any aha takeaways that you want to make sure you can share with the group when we're together on May 4th, just jot them down. Give yourself a note. If by chance you're not going to be able to make it to the May 4th meeting, send them to me and I'll be happy to share your thoughts with the group on your behalf.
Okay. Any other feedback on our conversation? So how Cognia works, and I know you probably all know, is so they send our report on to a board that has to give the final stamp of approval on it. So you'll notice on page 7 of it, or I think page 7 of it, we fell within the 5-year range, our score did, and but you'll be able to see that when you get it. So I think they say it's like 4 to 6 weeks after they give us our report, they will let us know officially if we were accredited or not after their accreditation board approves the other plans that come forward too. Superintendent engagement, again, we continue to work through that process. Weather hasn't really been very good about that. I did start in December there. You probably see if you've had some time to read my weekly little notes and updates. So I hope people have a chance to read that, trying to provide a little bit of more insight into some of the things that come across my desk and some of the things that are happening in our organization. So we will continue that. From now on, I think I've gotten good feedback on that. People appreciate me doing that. This spring, again, our liaisons will be out visiting with schools. I'll be out visiting with schools, and we'll continue to work through that. D, the North Dakota Public Health Insurance Trust. Again, so one of the conversations, as this continues to grow, is we are going to add 25 to 30 school districts in October 1st of 2022. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, just so that everybody's aware of it, sent out an email in regards to them stopping their ratings, their school ratings process based on a school pool for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So each school will be rated on their own criteria, their data of their employees that are on the plan, not based in a pool. So that was an interesting transition. So one of the things that I did that I'm worried about, and I don't want to make it and we can have a deep discussion, but it really gets into the weeds, is so I called all the SEEC schools because I see this change of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they will there's going to be some schools that get caught in the crossfire that don't have good data. And Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to cherry pick each individual school based on their data. So I just wanted to make sure our members were aware of that, and that we were able to make sure they had an opportunity to get in our pool this year. So I called some schools and everybody was fine, and we had some discussions. So I just didn't want to see our members get caught in the crossfire of this, because there will be some schools that do. Any questions about that? Again, that North Dakota Public Health Insurance Trust thing, that is one of the big things that we need to have a deeper conversation about going forward, is about what role that the SEC wants to play. We are currently the program administrator. We really have the invoices, the support the meetings, etc. But there's a whole nother level that has the potential to go to. And it's an interesting discussion from an SEC standpoint, or somebody that likes strategy like me, and you can follow what we do and some of the things we've got ourselves into. It, a lot of times I've made these decisions with the discussion internally with my directors, but some of these decisions I think people want to have a little bit more conversation about, as far as our members and our board. And I think that's okay. I'm not really sure, as you get bigger, how you separate operational from really big transformational shifts in where you're headed. So I think that would be a good discussion as we go forward here, and talking strategically about, where the organization should go, and engaging the board and our members at a little deeper level on some of those things.
Kyle, do you feel we have enough staff to accommodate adding 25 to 30 schools? Do you think that's a pretty short amount of time for the amount of work that the organization we do for that process?
The answer to that's an interesting question. So the answer to that question is that's part of why we're adding a payroll specialist to it. But just a little bit of insight, is these schools that we're adding to ND Fit, eventually somebody is going to have to hire somebody that has a little bit more insurance background, and that really can answer a little level higher question in regards to making sure from a compliance standpoint that we have that background. And so there's a model set up. So how we get paid dollars in that model for us to cover our costs in regard to that. The more schools that come on and the more people that come on, we get more dollars to do that. But there's just another level of work that there's a gap we have right now. The consultants understand the gap. We understand the gap. And we have to figure out a solution to fulfill that gap. Right now, I think we have enough people with this payroll person on. I think we can handle the work that we have. The expertise we don't have is that next level of an insurance person. And so the risk that we have, if you're into the strategies of stuff, like, I think after 17 years, you guys probably realize I like strategies, and I like to figure out where the puck is going, is, do we take some money and do we make an investment? Do we want to be longer term engaged in that ND Fit? Or do we not want to do that and force ND Fit or the consultant or them to fill it otherwise? And then eventually we won't be the plan administrator anymore, because the growth will happen somewhere else. And at some point in time, after I'm not here anymore, in the next 3 to 4 or 5 years, eventually it would kind of just be somebody else would have to build that foundation. If we don't make that investment, the SEC, and hire that person, that gap that's there, what we would be saying is we want to be where this resides long-term, because it's our schools and it's our people and it's our members. And we want to have some input, and we want to provide it some direction as opposed to somebody else. And it could be just the governing board creates their own entity and hires their own people over time. But somebody has to hire this person in the middle, and there has to be an investment long-term. And part of that investment would be is that this person would generate some additional dollars of revenue over time to help pay for the position. It's more about how to pay for the position within the model we currently have. So that was probably more than you wanted to know, but it's going to be an important decision. And so we will need to discuss that as we go forward here.
Now, there seems to be kind of some risk in this as well. And so I'm sure that's what we're kind of also evaluating, how long-term we want to be involved with, and staffing, and, you know, taking on additional staff and those kinds of things, and where it might go.
I would tell you from a board perspective, Heidi, and this is not to say we shouldn't be asking our exec director about staffing issues. I think really the board's role on this is to decide, is this fit our mission? It's great that we helped launch this to get a more affordable alternative for school districts that need to provide benefits to their employees. But at the end of the day, does this fit the mission of the SEEC for us to invest long-term, to actually hire an insurance consultant and put them on our staff and begin to sell ancillary insurance products? I would almost tell you, I don't think it does fit our mission, but that's just my thought process. I've been making notes here of things we're going to have to put on an agenda for a retreat, and this would certainly fall into that category. So I think to answer the question, we start as a board to say, does this fit the mission?
Right.
It's a good thing, but does it fit our mission? And if we say yes, then maybe we invest in personnel. If we say no, then we figure out, okay, what's our off ramp to get somebody else to take over what we've had to do to get this jump started.
Yep. And somebody take, you know, Brenna has, you know, they're not gonna shoo us away in the next year, 2, 3 years probably, because the knowledge Brenna has of the system and how it works. I mean, the organization isn't mature enough to do that yet, but it'll come eventually. And so that's, again, that, as you all know, whether it's, I'm usually one out there making that investment and anticipating that the financial risk is, we've gotten large enough where the financial risk isn't really the risk at all. I mean, when you have a $6.7 million budget, it's the risk of an employee isn't as big a risk as it used to be 10 years ago. But it does take away perhaps an investment in a different area though. So that's the discussion. What is the priority and the need?
So I guess that might lead to a question of how does that ND Fit board fit with our board? You know, there's an ND Fit board at the current time, correct?
Yeah, it's a separate organization. You know, I mean, they have their own board. We make no decisions for them anymore. Zero.
So is it that sort of, I don't know, I guess I haven't thought about it that much, but we're the owner of it, but
no, we aren't. The board owns it. They're their own organization.
Okay.
They contract with us.
Okay, they're contracting with us.
Yep.
Okay.
Brenna, you jump in if you have something to say on it though, because you're really involved. So if you don't think I'm saying that. Yep. So the board has, so go ahead, Brenna. You say what the structure is.
Yeah, we are just contracted by the board. I think in the beginning we were helping facilitate it more, but really we just take the notes, we take the money, we do the invoices, we make no decisions. There's a lot of customer service, and especially with the schools, because they know me. that comes in. And so the workload is pretty high for me, just for the customer service. So that's where, if we're gonna own it more internally and have a little arm of SEEC as ND Fit workers, or is ND Fit just gonna have to hire their own employees going forward? That's kind of the next few years, what it comes down to me anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word own it more. I would, I understood what she said, support it more. Right. I know what you said.
Yeah.
The word own,
Yeah.
I just didn't like support it more.
Support it.
Again, so models that we have set up at our organization to support the sustainability of the organization, that support, the more support we provide, the more schools we can handle, the more dollars we generate. So we generate about between $100,000 and $120,000 in fees to the SEEC for that work.
Yeah.
And you'll see that on the
it's
budget
supposed
line.
to be, it's supposed to be more of the administrative work of the invoicing and that type of thing. But the customer service of people calling me asking about their products, I mean,
Right.
I always have to go to somebody else right now because I haven't invested the time to learn the products, nor do I really want to get out there and sell and talk to each teacher about what the product can provide them. So that is kind of where the gap is that Kyle's talking about. And that would be a new hire type person, not who we have on staff here. So is that too much information?
No, it's important. It's important. I mean, it's important discussion. I mean, again.
Any other updates, Kyle?
Not that I can think of. We'll send that accreditation report out.
Yep. So
within
you'll get a couple of pieces of homework. One is the accreditation report. And again, just make a couple of notes for yourself of aha moments, ideas, or thoughts you want to share at the May 4th meeting. You're also going to get an invitation to do a Survey Monkey on Kyle's performance for the past year. Make sure you get that done in a timely manner as well. And with that, we will officially adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 4th at the new location of 3170 43rd Street South, Unit 103 in South Fargo. Or as I like to refer to it, that's really North Horace, I believe. Anything else for the good of the order this morning? Well, I hope you all have an opportunity to stay warm. It looks like we will eventually see spring. It's just not going to happen until we get out of February.
Thanks, everybody, for your time today. It's appreciated.